Hello, good morning. Yes, it's Alan Cox back again. Sorry about last week. I wasn't in any position to talk to you, but I'm here now. And on the other line is my good friend and colleague, David Parry. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Alan. Good morning, listeners. And I think you should tell our listeners your act of bravery, Alan, why we couldn't do the show last week, because I think things like that are important to share with our online family.
Right, okay. Right. Well, I didn't even, I went to the optician. The story is, I went to the opticians, it's been about 6, 7 weeks ago now. I was concerned about my eyesight, and that's first of all. I said, "Oh, I can't make your eyesight any better. I think it's cataracts." So they referred me to a private clinic under the NHS, and I went there, and I said, "It's not cataracts." It says you've got blood at the back of your eyes, uh, and showed me on the screen my left eye is absolutely full, my right one a little bit. So I had an appointment come through the NHS New Cross Hospital in Wolverhampton, and they were absolutely fantastic. But the long and short story of it is, I had to have injections in straight into both of my eyes, which sounds horrendous, I know, but amazingly, it didn't actually hurt. And I've got to go again at the end of this month. Yesterday, I had another appointment come through. I've got to have like 3 sessions. But the people criticise the NHS, and I know they're not perfect, and sometimes the waiting lists are ridiculous. But they got me in really quickly, and the doctor, who it isn't the doctor who injects you, but I had to go and see him before I went through to have it done, and he was on about these injections, and he said that. So they're a miracle. He says absolutely brilliant. They've helped thousands of people. He says we'll get you right. He says just to let you know. It says each injection costs the NHS £800. So I've had £1,600 worth of stuff pumped into the back of my eyes. The only thing that you feel, you don't feel the needle. You just feel pressure as the liquid goes in, and then. Obviously, you can't drive. Anne's cousin Linda, because Anne doesn't drive, took me, and she's going to take me again at the end of this month, because when you come out, it's like your eyes are just watering, and that watering goes on for it went on for about 3 or 4 days, just like having a really bad heavy cold. And if you have a cold in your eyes and you get the bottom of around your bottom of your eyes, and that goes sore from the tears. Well, that's what it's like, So that's why I wasn't here last week, but I'm here this week. So that's what went on, David.
I think that's an important statement. I mean, as we were saying off air, very British, down to earth, get on with things. Excuse me. I mean,
Well,
nobody
that's right.
knows.
Well,
Nobody likes these things, but they need to be done, Alan.
yeah. It. What I liked about it when I went there is that everybody was friendly and human, and even the doctor that it was an early appointment, and I was his first patient that he saw, and he said, just the way he talked, he's an Asian guy, a really nice guy, Mr. Uh, Gunlaw, that's it, Gunlaw. And he says, I'm really sorry, Alan, this is going to take a little while. And I'm thinking, okay, fair enough. He says, no, I've just come back today after having a shoulder operation. And they've upgraded the IT system in the hospital, and they brought everybody in so you know what you're doing. Of course, I missed it, didn't I? He hadn't got on the computer, he hadn't got a clue. And this other guy had to come in and help him. And then he shook my hand. He said, I'll look out for you next time you come in. And then when I went through to the next room, because you go through different rooms before you actually have it done, And the nurse says, "Oh dear, what an..." I bet the doctor on the screen. "He hasn't done this, he hasn't done that." I said, "Don't be too hard on him." And I explained to her, and she smiled, she laughed, she says, "Okay, yeah, I'll forgive him this time." Because he hadn't got a clue what he was doing on the computer. So it's nice to actually have a little bit of normal human interaction type of thing. But we got there in the end. We got there. So it is, NHS isn't all bad. I know it needs improvements, of course it does, but you can only go on your own experiences, David.
If it was all bad, this terrible government wouldn't be trying to sell it to the Americans. No, we're far too hard on an institution
Yes.
that we've built for our mutual benefit, and we will lose it at our peril. Good morning, Dave Moriarty, who's just said, "My goodness, your story, Alan."
Oh, hello, Dave. I can actually see today the comments. When we was on last time, they've altered the screen a bit. I couldn't work it out, but now I can see it this time. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
thank you for joining us, Dave.
As we were saying off air, you know, it's very British. Just get on with things. But I mean, the great treasure of the NHS is the nurses. I mean, as I said to you a couple of weeks back, I mean, they're the real experts nowadays. You know, all this micro training, and they know their jobs backwards. And I think it's appalling the way they're treated, the way we allow them to be treated. You know, I mean, if you're some sort of tech geek, good on you. But, you know, there's much more to life than that, and there's much more to health than that. And without the great treasure of the nurses that really do know what they're doing and are treated so abysmally, the whole thing would collapse overnight anyway. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, and also, it isn't just them, is it? It's the cleaners. It's the porters. Without these people, the hospitals would be in total chaos, and that'd be a much dangerous place to be in because of all the germs and everything. You know, I can remember back in 2019 when I was in hospital for a month, and this guy used to come around cleaning under the beds, you know, the framework and everything, and that's a hard job. You know, cleaning isn't an easy job, and it's a thankless job because it has to be done time and time again. It isn't like you, I don't know, you're a mechanic and you fix the car and that should be good for another couple of years or whatever. It's something that has to be done constantly. And how often do people get thanked for it? They don't, do they? So it's the whole institution, really, from top. My real criticism is that there's far too many chiefs taking big salaries for what? I think that is the issue and the problem, isn't it?
I mean, you were about to say top to bottom, so I was just about to say no, not top to bottom, and you caught yourself. Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased all the shareholders get an extra glass of champagne. Maybe that's not what it's all about. Maybe that's not what it's all about. Yeah. You know, I mean, the nurses are just godsends because of the training. The cleaners are vital. Even what was it? The hospital visitations, like clergy do that. You know, it's a marvelous example of a social organism where everybody plays a part, everybody's necessary, and everyone looks after everybody else. I think the way we speak about our NHS and the way we treat the people in it is absolutely abysmal because of a few people at the top. That, again, that's very British, that seem to think they can do anything they want and say anything they want, and nobody's going to say boo to a goose. It might be time to say boo to a goose. What do you think, Alan?
I do indeed, and strangely enough, you know, we're talking about at the moment the NHS and nurses, but linking it to the spiritual side. Have you noticed that even people who, shall we say, will will say, "Oh, I don't know whether I believe in spirit, or I don't know whether I believe in that." When things get tough, what do and I don't know whether I believe in God. What do people do? They pray. They they look to a spiritual comfort and answer. So I think a lot of times it isn't the fact that people don't believe. I think it's that perhaps in some ways they're frightened to that to believe that there could be such a powerful influence there, because we live in a society where everything is bombarded on TV, newspapers, radio, etc. And it's all about, well, if you buy this shampoo, you'll be absolutely fantastic, and all the men or all the women will be clamour to you. You know, you've got to have the best TV. You know, you've got to go abroad for your holidays. You know, you've got to spend this, you've got to spend that, and this makes you into the perfect human being. And I think that's part of the problems of society today, especially over here. I don't know if you see that, David.
Why, Alan, that's the best criticism of America I've ever heard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's their fault as usual. I'm sorry. Shout at me. I don't care, all of you. I don't care. Yeah, but the difference is in their society, in American society, they sort of, I mean, most of them have the bigger picture. So, yeah, that's part of it. That's advertising, that's business. What else are we doing? Whereas over here, I don't know. We tend to take it in a more passive way. Therefore, it gives a wrong impression a lot of the time. There's nothing wrong in having a better TV if that's what you want. I mean, my wonderful husband and I don't even have a TV, but if that's what you want, great. But don't remember the deeper and more important things in life, like community and loved ones, and the fact that your life isn't just limited by your biological frame, your biological form. There's more to every human being than just a body. What do you think, Alan?
I totally agree. No, I'm not against people having material things. Of course, I'm not. We all we all live in a material society. But I think it's when it's bombarded at you that this is what creates a happy and contented life is by having everything that is thrown at you. You know, the, and it can put a lot of pressure on people to, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who still have the mentality of that expression, keeping up with the Joneses. And it's like, well, if so and so's got it, oh, I've got to have it. You know, it's and not perhaps because that is what they wanted. It's just because somebody else has got it. And yeah, that's such a pity. I'm not saying everybody's like it, of course they're not, but it is an element of society, and I don't think that the way that life over here is geared up makes it any easier for that. And I think people lose themselves in everyday life and don't look at the bigger picture. What's actually going on, shall we say, in the world, or even within themselves? So how many people really understand themselves? Now that's the question, isn't it, David? How many of us actually know ourselves? Never mind knowing somebody else. I don't know how you look at that one.
Well, I mean, don't forget, part of my background is in counselling and therapy. So, I mean, to know yourself, you'd have to be a saint. So that's a lifelong journey. I mean, I'm not really willing to say I've met any saints. I have met one or two people bloody close to it,
Yeah.
but I'm not willing to go that extra hog, that extra step. Yeah, I mean, it always amazes me. The kingdom of heaven is within you, as our good Lord said. Why people ignore that, and they do. They ignore it. They don't sidestep it. They ignore it, and get
Um,
obsessed with trivial things. As I say, most of the time, trivial things have a place, but they're not everything.
yeah, it's strange, you know, but the you know the fact that human kindness is still there, and even on a small personal kind of level, without going into all the details, but my son Alex, he's just split up from his partner of 26 years, and everybody, not just who were friends with Alex, are saying that his ex-partner is wrong. She's treating him absolutely terrible. But and his two children, my grandchildren, I mean, one's nearly 18, the one's just coming up to 16. So they've watched what's gone on, and even they can see that their mum is out of order. But and they even looked for somewhere for him to live, to stay. Anyway, they found this lady offering a room in her own house, just literally 3-4 minutes walk away from where the kids live, and she's turning out to be an absolute incredible lady. 64. She is a nurse, amazingly, but she looks after children who have got learning difficulties and psychological differences, and Alex has put a lot of weight on, and it's all through being unhappy. And she says, "Look," he says, "you'll be eating. I'll be cooking. You'll be eating with me my food." Says, and we'll go on walks together. Says, and we'll sort your weight out. So anyway, he's joined the gym. He went for his first session yesterday, and he says he's gonna go at least 3 or 4 times a week. And I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is, he says she's absolutely lovely, such a lovely lady, and it's almost like she was put there because he says, for the first time in years, I actually feel relaxed. He says the only thing that I miss is not having my children with me all the time. But having said that, he's having a couple of weeks paid leave off work. He's been picking up, taking to school, bringing them back, taking them out. So he isn't missing out. But what I'm trying to get at is, there's good and kindness out there in the world. It isn't all doom and gloom. And you could argue that's part of a spiritual kindness. He says, that people like that are out there, and she's taking him on trust, and he's taking her on trust. So that's a big thing, to have somebody you don't know come and live in your house, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, I think we'd all be very cautious of that, but I don't think there's a need to add on, phrases like spiritual trust and kindness. Kindness and trust are spiritual.
Yes.
By very definition, by their nature, they're spiritual. Since we live in a physical world, nature red in tooth and claw, as Tennyson said. Well, that's true, but also the kindness of a stranger, which has no survival value, which has no explanation. There is no ruthless biological, zoological explanation for those things. They occur all the time, and they define us as human beings. And
Yes.
that says something very deep and very powerful and profound about our experience of the world and how deep we can go into it, which of course, and I think animal intelligence is underrated. I think there's a lot more than people realize, and being unkind to animals is terrible. But can they really pierce the depths of these worlds? I'm not sure they can. That strikes me as uniquely human. What do you think, Alan?
I do. It's fun if you mention animals, because just lately I've been taking a lot more notice about animal behaviour, and even the dangerous animals, like lions and tigers and that type of thing, within their own family type of thing. When they especially David Attenborough, the way he's filmed them and that they act with kindness towards their own. And you can actually see that they do love each other. And then you get it when you get some animals like dogs and cats and even horses, where they're kind of drawn to human beings. And just like human beings, you can have a nasty human being, you can have a nasty dog, cat, or horse, or whatever. But most of them, they kind of become in tune with the human being who's looking after them, and that they kind of know if everything's all right or not all right, and have this way of supporting that person. And I find that is an incredible, fantastic trait in animals. And when you see these, the RSPCA asking for financial help, and they show you the excuse me, the animals that have been mistreated, and I think to myself, how could anybody treat them like that? How can they? The first instinct is well, perhaps the person who's done it ought to be treated as the same themselves. What's the Old Testament say? An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I don't know, but it's I just don't understand some people how they can treat animals like it. But then again, they can treat humans like it, can't they? So it's a mixed up world, David.
There are lots of people being cut off from their wider selves and their wider community and nature. I think Attenborough's done an extraordinary job over the years. I mean, he's clearly got a religious attitude to nature. I don't mean that in a trivial sense. He sees its beauty, he sees its meaning and value, and I don't think he holds back at that. I mean, has he done any cutting edge original research which would make him a scholar? Actually, no, he hasn't. But what he has done is realign and awaken us to nature and its beauty and its majesty, its dangers as well as its kindness. I mean, he's done a sterling job through the years. A British naturalism. Oh my God, I'm getting patriotic. Hopefully, not in the wrong way. I mean, from Darwin onwards, I mean, it's made such a contribution to human understanding, our understanding of our world and ourselves, that it really just can't be ignored and shouldn't be ignored. It's not something you do just on TV once a week if you can be asked to do so, because you're immersed in that world anyway. And it's I mean, the one thing that wasn't on an Attenborough show that tickled me. I mean, there was one thing actually, as an aside, yesterday that I saw where a guy in a wheelchair and actually worked his way. I don't know if it was in Britain or not. It sounds British. Worked his way into a bear's den, a bear's cage in a zoo, and the bears were staring him out, and he was staring them out as well. And the first thing I said to Dan was, "Thank God they're brown bears." That's the countryside in me coming out, because of course brown bears like people, whereas black bears tend to not be able to stand people. So the brown bears were all thinking, "Well, who's he and what's he up to?" But he wasn't really in any danger. And the other story was, I mean, obviously we're mammals, and on one level we're mammals, and we have to be careful. I mean, if we're talking about reptiles and lizards, we've got to be careful. But there was one naturalist I saw a couple of months ago that tickled me pink, where he got hold of this baby albino alligator, and it loved being washed with a toothbrush. Because have you seen that one? It got in between his scales.
I think I have, yeah.
And it was sat there grinning. It was sat there grinning as he was going over it with his toothbrush. And I thought, my God, I mean, that's amazing. One more story before I hand back to you, because my brother was particularly taken by it as well. A meeting of worlds, not just creatures, a meeting of worlds. There was some, I think, TikTok footage of a crab eating a strawberry. And
really?
It picked it down. Yeah, it picked it down. It tried a bit. So it picked it up. It tried a bit. It put it down. Then it picked it up, wouldn't let go, and kept noshing on this cherry. Sorry, cherry. and it clearly was obsessed by the lovely flavour of the cherry and wouldn't let
Amazing.
go. And you think, but under the sea, you'd never get that sort of encounter. So it really was. I think I've seen it with other fruits as well, like strawberries, but the cherry one was the first, and it just tickled me, as I say, pink, because it wouldn't let go, and it was clearly enjoying it, and it would have nothing like that under the sea. So we're surrounded by intelligence. I said this on a UFO show recently. I mean, aren't we alone in a void? Well, actually, no. We're surrounded by animal intelligence, if nothing else. There's
Yes, that's
intelligence
right.
all the way through nature, and you have to be a really cut-off accountant, city slicker not to notice that. Because if you've never had a dog or a cat, or it's palpable. It's part of what we know on an instinctive level as human beings. We know we can hurt them; they can be hurt, and why aren't we looking after them better as stewards of the world, which is what the Bible asks us to be, not conquerors? What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, so I tell you, I bet that it just reminded me of my childhood and our family pet dog was named Spot because it's black and it got like a white spot on its breast, and the end of his tail was white, and everything else about it was black. And across the road from us, the two white cottages are still there now. My auntie and uncle's two aunties lived in the one cottage, and uncle lived in the other one. And then there's houses to the side of it now. That used to be their land, and it was in like a triangle shape. And the canal the canal's been like boxed in now, but the canal run at the back is quite a biggish piece of land. And my uncle Frank used to keep chickens. He got it sectioned off, but things like rats and whatever could get through. Foxes couldn't. And if any rats come onto the field and that, these Frank used to come over, get Spot, our dog, take it over, and he was like a rat catcher. He'd get the rats, he'd kill them, he would fling them around, wagging his tail that happy, and then come bounding back, want to, lick you. You had to fight him off after he'd been killing these blooming rats. So, yes, that was that the dog must have really enjoyed it, and he wanted to share his ecstasy with you by licking you, which wasn't a very nice thing to happen. But yeah, animals, they know a lot more than you think, don't they?
I don't wish to be critical, but you don't section chickens. They should see their GP first.
Yes. Oh, I'll tell you what he did. I'll tell you, this lasted with me all my life. What he did. I don't know. I can't remember how old I was. I was probably about 11 or 12 or something like that. And he got the chickens. He said, chickens can die and live again. I said, what do you mean? Oh, and it was awful. He cut the head off this blooming chicken, and it ran around and ran around with all the blood spurting out. It went on. It went on for ages and ages. And that's stayed with me all my life. What an awful thing to see. I tell you. Oh dear. Yeah.
Well, for
Sorry.
once, you've caught me in my tracks, and I don't know what to say. It
Well,
reminded me of stories I read about the guillotine during the French Revolution, where because there was the argument amongst the aristocrats was, would the head, I mean, right, grim story, change it after this, would your head still be alive for seconds or minutes or whatever, when it was cut off from the body? Would that actually occur? And there was one story I read years back of a friend who, someone amongst the rebels, life is life, it's always more complicated, had a friend who was an aristocrat who they couldn't manage to get off the hook at the last minute. And his friend said, I will blink my eyes if I'm still conscious once I've been guillotined. Right? So his revolutionary friend got to the front of the stalls, or he got to the front to see. The guillotine went down, And as the executioner held his head up, which of course they used to do for the aristocracy, the eyes did blink. And then his friend, revolutionary friend, thought, isn't this horrible, grim humour? Right, is that just a reflex, or is he still there? Because, of course, there'd be no way of knowing. There'd be no way of knowing unless you had it done yourself, and nobody really wants to do that. So, yeah, I mean, nature is this extraordinary, living, wonderful, fully souled creation. And, I think the fact we're not aware of it as much as we used to be is actually very saddening. I'm behind the ecologists, I'm behind the naturalists, I'm behind all these wonderful people that want to waken us up again to, that this is part of our lives as well. And it's an incredible part, frightening at times, but beautiful beyond belief, and part of us as human beings, whether we like it or not. What do you think, Alan?
No, it's right. Just going back to that about the guillotine, just that Carry On film, wasn't it, with Kenneth Williams beheaded. He said, "Got a letter for you." He said, "Put it in the basket. I'll read it afterwards." I always remember that.
I used to love those shows. Those shows.
Oh dear. Yeah, it's yes. We are living in very troubling times, aren't we, at the moment? And I think a lot of people are turning to either spirituality or religion for some kind of guidance or understanding what's going on. And there's a lot of fear in the world at the moment. I mean, also, it's right, Anne's just said to me, Westward O on the North Devon coast. Absolutely love that place. Absolutely gorgeous. And for this last week, there's been some warships, British warships, just off the coast, and helicopters going. They're doing manoeuvres just off an holiday seaside town, and you think to yourself, well, what's actually going on out there? It just seems a bit of an odd place for it to happen. But there again, I suppose it's at sea, so who knows? But I belong to the Westward O community thing, and I get notifications, and it's been going on now for about the last 4 days, and it does make you wonder what's going on out there, David.
Well, yeah, I mean, nature's full of mysteries. I mean, to think nature is just nature is actually never what the naturalists have said. I mean, point one, Darwin, I imagine, was deeply spiritual. I mean, he was a Unitarian. He came from a family of Unitarians. I think people jump on him without the full story. I mean, I gave a talk for Darwin's centenary years back, where he wouldn't go to church with his wife on a Sunday, which only proved he was a Unitarian. I mean, one of his uncles was a minister who used to read The Origin of Species from the pulpit and say what a great insight into God's creation it had given. Again, there are certain movements nowadays that want to limit your experience of nature, but why? And that's an argument amongst the naturalists themselves. Isn't nature enough? I don't know what that sort of phrase is meant to mean. Nature is nature, and it implies certain things. I mean, certainly as people on this show and beyond know, I'm interested, as someone who counts themselves as very much a modernist in one sense, I'm interested in the medieval philosophy, because natural philosophy, as they used to call it, which is not only white magic, that's another way of saying white magic, but also a way of exploring things on an abstract level. So, they would say, and who started this interest in nature? The church. The scholars, in the church in the Middle Ages, it was one of the ways they felt they could learn about God. The scholastics, they weren't just writing books on grammar, and correcting each other. They were also doing stuff like that. And the natural philosophers would say, until you're aware of the beauties of nature and its processes, they would have been 100% behind modern research, 100%. until you know those things, you can't really appreciate anything higher, or you won't understand it properly. I mean, there were wonderful ideas that we were surrounded by elemental lives, and the elementals were nature, but also not nature. They were something sort of extended from it, rather like human beings were nature, but we're more than nature. And they would talk about these elementals. Say you take the elementals of the air, the sylphs. I mean, they were beings with bodies of air and moisture, of warmth and moisture. That was their body. And there are long arguments about how that can be seriously considered as a body, not the whole flow of air and moisture, of warmth and moisture, but individual pockets of warmth and moisture. And that even comes up in Shakespeare in The Tempest, where Prospero, the great magician, is speaking to Ariel, and thou who art made of air. So the medieval philosophy, the natural philosophy, I think is very, very deep, remarkably deep and profound. And it always interested me that the churchmen of that period would have insisted, until you know something about the natural world around you, you won't really be able to understand these mysteries. What do you think of that, Alan?
Now you mentioned Prospero, it just came into my mind. Alan and I were doing an event down in Brighton, actually, right on the seafront, hotel on the seafront, and this guy come in. I mean, I don't know how old he was. I mean, we're going back, probably going back 20 years or so ago, and I would say he was probably in his 60s then, and whether he's still with us now, I don't know. And he was dressed kind of, shall we say, not conventionally, right? He got kind of um, like a, a, a elongated top kind of hat, but like it was like squashed slightly, and his clothes were kind of a little bit like the Pearly Queen, but not quite. And a flowing coat and that. And he's a really nice guy. And I asked him his name. He said, "I'm Prospero." And that just came to my mind. And he was a really nice but very spiritual guy. And when you said that, the image of this guy has just come back to me. So whether he's still with us or not, I don't know, but he called himself Prospero. I never know his actual birth name, but that's what he called himself. So he must have been into the if you want the philosophy of Prospero to actually call himself that, I would imagine. But, and also at that time there was a lady there, and a daughter, I think at the time was about 13, and she said she was one of the Indigo children. And you meet some very interesting people who following their own course in life that, shall we say, don't fit into what society class as the normal. And why shouldn't they? If they're not harming anybody and they're doing what they feel is right, and they feel they're contributing in some way to society, why shouldn't they be out of the box? I don't know. You look at that, David.
Well, I mean, you've hit it on the head, Alan. As me, as an old libertarian, why do people feel the need to tell other people how to live all the time? Mind your business. I'm sorry. You know more. I didn't realise you knew more about my life than I do. I'll sit here and take notes. I mean, why is there this need to interfere with how other people lead their lives? I've never ever understood that, which is one of the reasons I became a libertarian. Let things be. If it's not hurting anybody, and I mean, indigo people tend to be very sweet people anyway. Leave them alone. Why interfere? What's
Yeah.
it got to do with you? I think we're too hard on New Age types anyway. I mean, I don't know. I'd love to be more of a New Age type. I mean, they're all in good tax brackets for a start. Waving around crystals on a beach in Hawaii. I wouldn't mind doing that. I mean, why not? I mean, I think it's very sweet that some people want to live in that type of way. It's decorous. it's sort of enchanting in its own small way. And why not? Why not, as I say, let people alone and just let them express themselves in the way they feel is natural to them? What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was just thinking, Lee, my stepson, and son, he's 40. Hang on, how old is he now? 43, and I love him to bits, but he, he's how can I put it? He really wants to live to nature, and in all fairness, our grandchildren are being brought up in that way, and they get lots of adventures out in. They live quite close to Wales, on the Welsh English border, and they do, up the mountains, you name it. They do it, kayaking a lot. But this last weekend, he booked this cottage, and it was near McCullough, which is like central West Wales, and it was right in the middle of nowhere, apparently. 2 nights, and their cousins went with them as well. And he said, "I knew it was basic." He said to me, we spoke to him on the last Tuesday. So I knew it was basic. He said, but I didn't realise it was basic as it was. And the water for the property, for the cottage, was from a tank, and the tank was filled up from the well, which the owners filled up by using the pump. Well, they hadn't filled it up properly, had they? So the first night they were there, the water ran out. So there he was, having to pump the water out of the well into this tank. So they could just even use basic things like the toilets. So, but to add to that, last year he wanted to be self-sufficient, so he spent a load of money on buying these gigantic pipes. I mean, they were really big, and he started to do a borehole in his garden. And he said, "You never know what's happened." He said, "I want to be self-sufficient, have my own water supply." Yeah, he got down to the water. It, it was all browny black. It was awful. And funnily enough, I said, about a month ago, I was there. I said, "Are you doing any more about that borehole?" He goes, "That was a mistake, wasn't it?" So, but he's trying his hardest to live a different kind of life. So. Well, it's funny how different things come into your mind, but he certainly is trying to live to have the trappings of, so it's a modern society, but actually living more the wild kind of way, type of thing. The best every opportunity he has. So I think in some ways that's quite good, but we laugh about it, not taking fun out of it. You just think, what else is he going to come up with, David?
Oh, no, more power to him. I mean, my trouble with that is people have a romantic view of going back to nature and living close to the resources. It takes bloody hard work. And, it's 24/7. You can't just do that. I mean, the sages of old, I mean, people have a romanticized view of them. The Chinese mystics, who, as an example, who wrote all these amazing things. Actually, they went into seclusion with their servants. How else do you think they got all that stuff written? Otherwise they'd be ferreting around for food and drink all day. There's a romantic view of it all. It's fun and it's nice, and no one should be stopped. And good luck to you, but it's bloody hard work, I think, if you want to really live close to nature on your toll and your own resources. At your own resources. I mean, that's the very reason why communities started. Back in very primitive days, that is why they started. So people weren't just looking at the basics all the time.
Well,
And you reminded me of something, actually. The hat you mentioned that the guy Prospero was wearing. There was
yeah,
excuse me, there have been unearthed across northern Europe golden conical things made of gold, literally, where they have stars and moons engraved into them. And it seems the old master druids would have worn them on sacred occasions as part of their calculations for the seasons.
All
Because, of
right.
course, in those ancient days, you needed to know that so people could eat. So they had this mystical knowledge, the knowledge of the stars, astronomy, engraved into a conical shape, which, of
Amazing.
course,
Yeah.
would look to us nowadays like a conical hat. So that seems to be where that comes from, that idea.
Yes. The just going back to the being out the walls and that, that they went up the mountain in Wales a few weeks ago, and Zachary, my grandson, on the phone, he says, "Hey, Grandad, you know, we went up the mountain. You know what we found at the top?" And I said, "Was it the McDonald's?" He says, "No, Grandad, it was snow."
Yeah. From golden cones to McDonald's, I'm sort of the enemy of McDonald's, like I am Monsanto. Why do working people have to be treated so badly? Is that all we're allowed at McDonald's? I think we've got to change the subject very quickly, or basically Como David is going to come into the conversation very quickly. I think the way working people, there's so much against working people nowadays that we all settle for far too little. And that's part of the problem in the system. We're no longer willing to roll over, yes, my lord, no, my lord, 3 bags full, my lord. I mean, why should we? Because we're creations of the all highest, we're sons and daughters of the cosmos. Why should we do that? What do you think, Alan? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, David.
Right. So, what do you think of that,
Are you
Alan?
there?
Yeah. I just made a rant. Did you hear it?
Yeah. Sorry. Well, partly it's amazing that my internet decided to go down for a second, just when you were saying.
I'm sure it doesn't want me talking
McDonald's.
about workers' rights.
No, that's probably what it is. That's probably what it is. Yeah. Yeah. You know something? I'm just thinking about it. There's probably as many McDonald's in this country as there is churches. What does that say about society? And unfortunately, probably McDonald's get more congregation into their places than the churches do.
And right, you won't expect me to say this. Unfortunately, that says a lot about the churches.
Yes.
I mean, right. I mean, what do they think? Close them down. How about that for a radical? Apart from the ones that are major works of art, close them down. They're serving no purpose. Right? A group of people with a couple of ideas in their head that don't even like each other meet once a Sunday, and there we are. They go home, and the world's no different. Nothing has changed. They're not leading more loving lives. They're not learning more about life. So close it down. Close them down. What's the point? Let's start again with spiritual centres. I mean, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. It's a church. It's a church. It's a temple. What do people think churches are meant to be? There's groupings of old people boring each other to death. If that's a church, close it down. But, I personally like to think there's more to it than that. I mean, certainly because I founded St. Valentine's Hall, and what we had was a group of people coming and searching into the mysteries. We had services of worship. We had sessions of meditation. We did all sorts of things. It was primarily an LGBTQIA plus. I hope they don't add any more letters to that. Plus, initiative. It was primarily that, but all were welcome, including unbelievers. And we were community, and we were trying to understand the world and life and insides and outsides, and that's church. But and people enjoyed coming. It's just we had huge financial problems when we had when we had access to the building.
Yes.
And we were lucky to be able to get two straws together, but people miss everything we do down south, and we're sorry we couldn't do better, and we just did what we could hopefully that initiative can start up here again at some point, because I think that's a good idea. People don't like the word church now. Sadly, I can understand why. Unless they're major works of art, people understand that. And I mean, some of these churches and cathedrals are so stunningly beautiful. I mean, some of them are on the World Heritage Sites. But unless they're that, what are they for, and what are they doing? A fair, but I won't be that cruel. A fair percentage of congregations really need to put their thinking caps on and ask if they're really serving the gospel or not. The gospel. It's a word in Greek that means good news. Have you got any good news? Well, looking at that face, you haven't. And are you sharing that good news with other people? The answer's no. And if you're not doing that, close the building. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, well, I subscribe to it's only £5 a year. Get a monthly book from the Essington magazine, which is which is done by St John's um, um, Church of England Church in the village. There's two churches in our village, the Methodist and the Church of England, and the magazine comes around and read what's in there, and fair play to them. They have a child's creche there. They do things for young mums. They put on evening events. Not to try and bring the community together. They organise people to go around volunteering around the village to clear the village up of any paper and whatever lying around and whatever. So they do seem to want to do something with the community. Very strangely enough, never hear anything of what the Methodist Church do. No, I'm not saying they don't, but it doesn't reach. It doesn't reach out into the villages if they actually are proactive, where St John seemed to be. So there are some churches that want to involve the community, but I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of them. People turn up on a Sunday. They sing a few hymns, do a few prayers, go home, and think that's salvation for them when the big day comes and they pass over. So I don't know. It's a strange world we live in, David.
No, I'm much more critical than you on that. They're doing nothing. They're telling themselves they're the great and the good and the saved, and nothing has happened. Dave Moriarty has just said olden churches, not golden arches. I think we both agree with that. No, I mean, don't forget, churches used to be community hubs up until late Victorian times, early Edwardian times. They were community hubs. I mean, and that needs to come back. Everything would happen in the local church: pantos, theatres, music. If you wanted to learn how to paint, you would go to the local church because there would be a club or society which was supporting that. It sounds to me like the Anglican Church is doing, or at least half doing, what a church is meant to do. If these old fossils think that going to a religious service once a week, bitching on the way out and feeling smug on the way back to their house has done anything, they are deeply deluded and not living a gospel life. And I'm willing to say that to their faces. And in fact, I have done. I don't think rudeness solves anything. I mean, there are far too many rude people around at the minute. We don't live in a society that's never critical. We live in a society that's overcritical. And the basic manners are being forgotten nowadays, which isn't good and solves nothing. There is manners maketh man and all that sort of stuff. So courtesy, we all need to be much more courteous to each other. That used to be a hallmark of British life, and that is going, sadly. But that doesn't mean you don't say a few home truths in the correct way, in a loving way, when it's called for. What has happened in your assembly? Nothing. Please don't tell yourself that the Spirit, church is meant to prepare you for the Spirit. It's meant to teach you about the glories of nature and unveil the mysteries inside yourself and give you a vision of spirit. Is it doing that? If the answer is no, then you're not in a real church, not a full church. What do you think, Alan?
No, I totally agree with you. I can remember when I was growing up, for the first 14 years of my life, my mum and dad went to Church of England, St Giles's Church in Willenhall, which is still there, and then they changed to the Methodist Church, and strangely enough, that doesn't exist anymore. It's a housing estate now. Where that on the land that it took up, they've built about 20 houses on it, and I think that probably says a lot about the community, doesn't it? But St Giles's Church used to have a youth club. I used to go on the youth club on a Sunday, and that's something that seems to be something of the past, youth clubs, which I think did help. You know, I mean the normal things. You know, you play table tennis and different things like that. But it's a way of youngsters around about your own age getting together. That doesn't seem to happen, and I think that is a terrible shame, really, because it's like that makes it harder for us to be a community spirit, David.
Well, I mean, in the old days, the churches weren't just open on Sundays; they were open every night of the week, every day of the week, and activities were taking place every day and every night of the week. You know, it wasn't reduced to just youth clubs.
Yes.
Although I agree with you, I think they're very good ideas. You know, I mean, loneliness is an increasing modern phenomenon. Nobody knows, youngsters in particular. My heart goes out to them with what they're going to have to face. They don't even know how to relate to each other now. I mean, schools are basically demilitarized zones. You know, with teachers having their heads hammered against the floor. There was a case in the newspapers the other day. You know, so they're not learning anything. To be honest, I think the kids know they're being cheated. You know, education is largely to get you working in a factory or a shop. Don't really think about things, but you've got enough skills to get a job. They know they're being cheated. They know that. It's in them at the back of their minds. They know that, and they don't like it. But, you know, on a wider scale, I mean, if you want to play a computer game to you're blue in the face, there's no skin off my nose. I can't imagine much more of a waste of time, but it's no skin off my nose. And I can see how some of them are fun. But, you know, you don't have the skills to meet people. You will never, ever meet people. I mean, there was a big play recently, wasn't it? TV drama about incels, involuntary celibates, and how this young boy in the drama kills a girl. It was very famous. It made international news. I mean, adolescent. I can't remember.
Yeah.
You know, and it was hard hitting. It really actually missed the reality of the incel phenomenon, which is growing. Is that these people, these boys, feel cut off, and they don't know how to relate to other human beings. You know, the churches in the old days would have been areas, you know, where you could learn how to do that. Therefore, churches, no. I mean, I'm obviously I'm a supporter of churches as a cleric, but maybe not the type of churches that are going around at the minute.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to hope that we've reached out and communicated with people, but time has beaten us, David. So, you know, I did my Jimmy Young thing right at the very end there.
As always skillful, as always skillful.
Anyway, I want to thank you for this morning, David. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have, Dave, as well. I can see your name there in the chat room. So anyway, until next week, God willing, I'll leave you on this, at the moment, sunny morning in Staffordshire. And God bless and goodbye for now. And I always have this problem of how to end the program. What does it do this to me? Where are we? Please excuse me. This has become bizarre. Ah, there we are. I found it. Right. I will go. Right. Eventually. Right. Bye.